You ever get that feeling when you're looking at a jazz chord progression that you just don't understand what's going on? Why does it all have to be so complicated? Why do jazz musicians and composers have to write chords that just don't fit neatly into a box? I've had this feeling plenty of times. And because I went to music school twice, I had to study a lot of music theory. But not everybody has that advantage, nor does everybody's brain work in the way that theory makes a lot of sense to them. So in this video, I want to show you how you can take a different approach rather than just like analyzing chord symbols and trying to get them to fit neatly together. And even if you are a theory person, this is really going to help you, because at the end of the day, we're looking to play convincing solos over these changes rather than all understand them and be able to talk about them and explain them in exactly the same way. Our game is to sound good playing over the top of them. And that's what we're trying to accomplish today. Now, we're going to use one of my favorite tunes in jazz history, the great Cannonball Adderley tune, Things Are Getting Better, from the album of the same name, released in 1959. Big year in jazz. If you've never checked out this recording, please put this on one of your playlists after you're done watching this video and just bask in the glow of how amazing and joyous and swinging this stuff is. Of course, the great vibraphonist Milt Jackson is also on this album, and these two together, not to be missed. Okay, without any further ado, let's dive into what we want to talk about today, and then I'll see you at the end. All right, so the very first thing I want to do is I just want to play you the progression to Things Are Getting Better, right? Now, if you're familiar with this tune, you're going to hear that melody. You're going to be singing that melody over the top. It's such a great melody. But I just want to get the sound of this into your head because we're going to be looking at these chords and we're going to be deriving everything that we're talking about from one particular section of this tune. So here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we get stop time. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Cool. So that's the progression. We get that floating around in our ears now. Now, the part that I want to look at is the fourth line here. We're just going to take this and we're going to talk about how it's structured, and we're going to do some things to show you how important voice leading is, and largely voice leading is the reason why all these chords exist the way that they are. Okay, so stick with me here because this is where we're actually going to do something a little bit different and then investigate why this chord progression is so effective and why a lot of jazz chord progressions are the way they are through this right here. So one thing that a lot of people say about jazz is, why do the chords have to be so complicated? Because in a lot of jazz tunes, everything doesn't fit neatly into this diatonic box. So what is diatonic? It just means that we're staying within the key signature, right? So that means that if we're in the key of F here, F major, which we are, everything has to fit into that key signature of one flat. All the chords can only contain notes that are contained in the F major scale, and we can't stray at all. Everything fits really neatly into a box. A lot of jazz music doesn't, and it's frustrating. But again, there's a reason for it. So what have I done here? I've taken the fourth line of the tune and I've made everything diatonic. So we've got a 1 chord, which is obviously diatonic. Then we've got a 3 chord, which is A minor 7. Then we've got a 6 chord, which again is a minor chord, D minor 7. A 2 chord, G minor 7, a 5 chord, C7, and then we're back to 1. So what you're going to notice is that all of these notes fit really nicely into the key of F major. And what are these notes I have underneath here? Well, it's thirds and sevenths, or in the case of a 6 chord, a third and a 6. And what we're doing is we're just playing the third and the 7th, or the third and the 6th over every chord until this last one where we're playing the root in the third. I want you to listen to what this sounds like. I'm going to be playing the root of the chord in my left hand, and then these 2 notes that I've written on the sheet in my right hand. So listen to how this sounds. 2, 3, 4. Now, why have I done root and third here? Because it's the natural voice leading. If I were to go to the 6, I would move down a whole step. I'd rather just move up a half step because that's where it wants to go. Doesn't that have a very, very, very different sound than the actual progression, which is down here? I mean, listen to that again. It doesn't even really sound like things are getting better anymore. Totally different, simply because we've stayed diatonic. Doesn't this remind you a little bit more of like different styles of music? Like, let's say pop music. Pop music, a lot of different versions of pop music, they just use diatonic chords like the whole time, and they never stray from those diatonic chords. There are other forms of music that do the same thing, like the whole sound of the music is just based off of, hey, every song is largely diatonic with like maybe a tiny, tiny exception here and there. And it gives it a really particular sound. Okay, so now let's go to the actual chords of things are getting better. And you're gonna notice that a lot of these chords, most of them, don't fit into our diatonic box. A7, certainly not in the key of F because it has a C sharp. Oh, D7 not either. Oh, F sharp. Oh no. G7, B natural. And this is what really starts to freak people out. So we're utilizing secondary dominants to just like do our Roman numeral analysis. That's not really the important part here. The important part that I want to talk about is why these non-diatonic tones are actually here and what they do to the sound of the music, because that's really what we're concerned about. You know, when the chord progression was written for this, it wasn't like, oh, I want like a really fancy 5 of 6, 5 of 2, 5 of 5. No. That stuff is just a result of the actual notes that the composer wanted. So now with the presence of these various non-diatonic tones, the C sharp, the F sharp, and the B natural, that completely and totally changes the sound. You can hear the difference. Let's go back to the diatonic version. And now let's go to the actual version that we hear on the recording. Totally different vibe. Okay, so why? Well, now is where we dive into these notes a little bit more. So because I'm playing the thirds and the sevenths, you can see that there's really nice voice leading from chord to chord. I get a D, which is the 6th, and that goes to the 3rd of the A minor 7, which is a C. Now look, I play a common tone because A minor 7th, the 3rd is C, D minor 7th, the 7th is C. Now I go down to B flat, which is the 3rd of this chord. Then I stay on B flat because it's a common tone. The 3rd becomes the 7th. Then I come down another half step. So that top line, it sounds like this. Notice the presence. The particular thing that I want you to pay attention to is the presence of these common tones. Okay? That gives it a really, really particular sound. Now over here on the bottom, I've got the 3rd going to the 7th, going to the 3rd. going to the 7th, going to the 3rd, and then I go up to the root. Now there's some common tones here as well, right? F to F. But for the most part, it's just descending with either whole steps or half steps. 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now if we put those together, that gives us this effect. All right, now if we come down here, I want you to notice something. Look at the top line. So I'm still starting on the exact same note, the 6. Now when we move to the 3rd, we get a C sharp instead of a C natural. Now when we move to the D7, we get a C natural. Then we move down to a B. Then we move down to a B flat. And then we move down to an A. What's different? Do you notice that there's no common tones at all? Every chord, we're actually just moving down in half steps. We got rid of those common tones, and now there's motion in every chord. So that's something that's huge. That should tell us something, because that's a major, major difference between the diatonic version and the non-diatonic version. Now let's look at the bottom line. The bottom line is largely the same, except we have an F sharp here, right? And look, we've gotten rid of the only common tone that was in the top, F to F. We've gotten rid of that now. We've replaced it with F sharp to F natural. So here's the bottom line. All right, let's hear them together. Okay, so here's just sort of the big difference and why voice leading, first of all, voice leading is so important in jazz if you want to be an improviser. And second, this is kind of what separates like a jazz chord progression largely from something like a pop chord progression. So depending on what side of the fence you're on, this is why people who maybe don't like jazz don't like it. It's too much. It's too much. And then why people who do like jazz love it, because there's a little bit more harmonic complexity going on. The voice leading is much more busy over this. We see there's just more motion happening. It completely changes the sound because of that motion, and also sort of changes the way that we can approach playing over this chord progression. So you see, now this becomes less relevant, like the fact that this is a 5 of 6 chord, this is a 5 of 2, this is a 5 of 5. That actually becomes a lot less relevant, and what becomes more relevant is the underlying voice leading. And if we can hear that and identify it, we almost don't even need this Roman numeral analysis, as long as we can capture some of the stuff that's going on here. And you hear this in so many of your favorite solos, is that the soloist really understands the power of this voice leading, the fact that it's moving down in half steps. And a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, they play phrases where they are bringing out some of these notes that are changing. So you might hear somebody go, right? Do you hear how I really brought out the fact that D went to C sharp, went to C, went to B, went to B flat, went to A? Did you catch that? Excuse my horrible piano playing. Now I could also do something that really brings out this motion, and you will hear, it's very characteristic of some stuff that you might hear. Hear that? I'm highlighting the A to the G to the F sharp to the F to the E to the F. So I hear from students a lot of the time, like, why is voice leading so important? And in jazz, I think one of the major reasons it's so important to pay attention to the voice leading, dissect the voice leading, see if you can identify it, is because it's a really characteristic sound for a lot of styles of jazz to highlight the voice leading in your solos. So next time that you're confronted with a chord progression where you're not sure like how to do this Roman numeral analysis, and you feel a little handcuffed, oh geez, I don't know enough music theory to do like slash, all these secondary dominants, all this crazy stuff, take a different approach. See if you can find one voice in one chord leading to the closest voice in the next chord, the closest voice in the next chord, the closest, and see if you can make sense of it that way. And that's really going to inform so much of what you play, so that you actually don't even need to be able to do these Roman numerals, but you're still sounding great when you play over it because you're really good at recognizing these patterns. This is why you hear so many jazz teachers say like, hey, start by learning the thirds and the sevenths, because the thirds and the sevenths often, that's where the voice leading lives. But we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours and use countless examples of where we find this stuff. But for now, I just kind of want to leave you with that. Rather than always trying to analyze the chords and fit them in a nice, neat little box and do your Roman numerals, try taking this route instead of justifying why the chords are there. Or you know what? That's the wrong way to put it. We're not trying to justify anything because the chords are there. We don't have to justify them. We're not writing the tune. We're just trying to figure out how to play over it. So see if you can find that voice leading, because it will almost always lead you to sort of a style of playing that's more characteristic of your heroes. All right, so I hope that helps some of you that get really flustered and frustrated with trying to do Roman numeral analysis and figure out how all the chords fit together in that way. I hope you could see now that there's another path. And I know I sound like a broken record, but remember, we are in the business of playing cool stuff, not being able to explain everything that we're doing. And I'm sure that or have heard of a jazz musician that sounds ridiculous, but has no idea how to explain anything that they're doing. It's because they can hear and therefore reflect a lot of the stuff that we were talking about today. Voice leading. What's the difference between these chords and what should I bring out as I'm playing over progressions? So I hope this can provide you some insight in the future and ultimately, benefit your playing. I find that having the largest number of different ways to think about things has really helped me over the years as I've taught, hundreds and probably thousands of students at this point. Everybody clicks with a little bit of a different thing. So I'm sure a lot of you clicked with this explanation. At least I hope so. All right. All that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you appreciate this content, this is the kind of stuff that we do on the channel all the time, please give us a thumbs up. That really helps us to find more musicians like you that can benefit from this, and consider subscribing to the channel. There's also some information below in the description box of how we can work more closely together, and I can hopefully continue to help you on your musical journey. Thanks for hanging, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.